Michelle Irwin, and we'll start with Alan. You want to tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started with this organization?
Yeah, so I've been battling Duchenne muscular dystrophy all my life, and I graduated from Bentley University in 2013, and I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And after I graduated, a friend with DMD in the Netherlands was doing a petition to make airplanes wheelchair accessible. So I teamed up with him, and then we found out what Michelle was doing, and we joined with her, and we've been working together every day since like 2014.
Okay, well, very nice. And Michelle, how did you get started with this? And a little of your background.
So I am a mom to a 14-year-old boy who has spinal muscular atrophy, and I learned early on in traveling that it is very difficult and dangerous to travel if you have a wheelchair. And I just thought, well, is anybody working to improve this? And I learned that there was no organization out there specifically working on a wheelchair spot on airplanes. And so I created All Wheels Up back in 2012. And then in 2014, I met up with Alan, and we've just worked on this, like you said, every day since. And it's been a really great partnership, really great yin and yang.
Yeah, you know, to show my ignorance, the one thing that had never occurred to me was something that Michelle mentioned before we started, was an evacuation plan for people that require wheelchairs. You know, the question is how do they get safely off of an airplane in case of an emergency? And like I said, in all my time working on, accessibility and trying to find ways to help people that travel with challenges, I hadn't thought about that. So let's talk, I guess maybe that's as good a place as any to start.
Absolutely. I think Alan could, share the insights as a wheelchair user, if a wheelchair user thinks about, their own evacuation. But the reason All Wheels Up started to, get involved in this space is to implement a wheelchair spot on airplanes. We need an evacuation plan. And so that's why we started investigating and getting into this space. And once we started digging in, we realized that there's actually no evacuation plan today if you are someone with reduced mobility or have a wheelchair. And that's just, on the reduced mobility side. There's actually evacuation plans and things that haven't even been implemented if you are blind. For example, in 1977, the FAA circulars outlined to the airlines that they should put Braille evacuation cards on how to get out of the airplane safely. And that still has not been implemented over 40 years later. And so, like you said, it's a blind spot, but it's not just a blind spot for the community. It's also a blind spot for the industry in the regards of just not acknowledging the need for it.
Okay, and so Alan, is this something that you think about when you get on a flight? I know my wife, she travels with a wheelchair, but she has mobility, so that, it's not something we'd ever thought about.
Well, for me, in my situation, like I haven't gone on airplanes that much, and it stinks because I missed big family thing. I wasn't at my sister's wedding in South Carolina, and yeah, and so when I traveled, like you can see on our website, I did like firsthand research with my wheelchair on how it's like traveling like at the airport. And the best thing you can do is educate yourself on what to expect, how to be prepared. Because yeah, we've heard some really like terrible horror stories.
Yeah. Go ahead, Michelle.
But it's things.
Or Alan.
Yeah, like it's things like taking off the headrest, like putting the like removing everything you can put like in a carry-on, or like wrapping the joystick in bubble wrap. But like even if you do all those things, it's still you're basically just like praying nothing bad happens to your wheelchair.
So Ken, I'm going to circle back to, the evacuations, and I can share a story. It's not my story. It's not Alan's story, but it is a story. So there is an evacuation sling called the ADAPS evacuation sling. It's the one that All Wheels Up has brought to Congress to get on all airplanes in their emergency kits. There's 3 emergency kits on every single airplane, and we're looking for 3 of these evacuation slings to be added to every flight. And the reason that we know that this is the right evacuation sling and why it is needed is because in 2018, there was an emergency landing coming from Canada that landed with an emergency landing in Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. And there was a young man with cerebral palsy, and his family safely evacuated him down a deployed slide. And now you would think that the story would end there. And what a miraculous story that this flight, that this boy with cerebral palsy was able to go down the slide in this ADAPT sling safely. However, this plane had smoke in the cabin, and left behind were other people with reduced mobilities because they did not know how to get them out of the airplane. And the flight attendants from this flight had to borrow this ADAPT sling to go back and rescue the other passengers. And if that does not shed light on the situation that the airlines are not prepared to evacuate people with reduced mobility or who use wheelchairs, then nothing will. And in addition to wanting to get the ADAPT sling on airplanes, we read the report, and there was not one mention of someone with a disability on this airplane. There was not one mention of elderly people on this airplane in the report. And in addition, it was not listed about how the people with disabilities and how people with, that were elderly were evacuated from this plane. All they mentioned was that the people were evacuated from the plane safely and that there was minor injuries. And that is not a detailed enough report. And so what's happening is the analytical data that is really needed to sometimes make systemic change is not even there. And so that's what our organization is working on. Is we're going to be here. We're going to provide the slings for free through our Fly Safe Today program, so the wheelchair users do not feel left behind. But we also need to make these changes going forward. 1, collect the data correctly, and 2, get these slings onto the airplane so everyone is safe for travel.
Yeah, and I think that is so important. You mentioned the blind, and I'm like, how can we be in a situation where we're this backwards, especially in flying? Because it's interesting on a cruise ship. The first thing we do when we get on board is somebody from the cruise line meets us and wants to know what cabin we're in, so that they can make sure that there's that we're included in evacuating passengers that travel with mobility challenges. I can't even begin to imagine why there's not, like I said, I had the blind spot. Now you've made me wonder.
Well, and that's why we're here, right? That's why we do these podcasts, is to raise awareness, right? And educate everyone that, like you said, it's a blind spot. And I love making people aware. And so
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, the other thing that somebody mentioned to me recently and that I hadn't thought about is helping people transfer from the, because to get on, if you need a wheelchair to get on the plane, you're going to be on one of those little skinny mini wheelchairs that they use. But now you've got to get off and into a seat. And if you don't have the capability and you're traveling, especially if you're traveling by yourself, how does somebody help you in a dignified way get off? And I guess it was a gentleman in Great Britain. He pointed me at his website that they have like a transfer assist device to help, so that people aren't having to manhandle you to get you into the seat. And again, it's can be such a challenge. It's even worse if you're in a plane where the aisle rest doesn't move. Most of the new planes, the aisle rests move, but I've been on some of the older planes where you can't get the aisle rest up out of the way. And then it means you got to go up over the top of it. And again, uncomfortable and undignified. And
but imagine if you have a connecting flight, then you're trying to, get everything in order as fast as possible. And then you'll be the last one off the plane. So it's always incredibly tough.
Yeah.
So I know the device you're talking about in regards to the transfers. It's a great device. I believe it's called Able Move from a gentleman in the UK. Like you said, it's a great device. However, that device doesn't necessarily account for evacuations and where the covers your head, and but you can also use the adapt slings for transfers, and that we talk about that when we're promoting this device, because we actually call it the touchless transfer, especially right now in the light of COVID. But it's probably the only one of the only slings out there that actually take into account that it goes above your head, and so your head is safe during whether it's transport or evacuation. And it also goes all the way down to your feet. So again, when you're evacuating down the slide, you're kind of cocooned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I just want to add that like sometimes people take the cushion from their wheelchair and put it on the airplane seat. Like for me, I can't sit down in a regular airplane seat without my butt hurting. So there's.
Yeah, my wife does that when we're flying. In fact, she just got some new memory foam. She's handy, so she's making some new cushions, because for example, even in my car, she can't right now to sit in my car comfortably because she's got very long legs and they're not particularly flexible. She's got one artificial knee, two artificial hips, her back's fused. And so what she has to do is right now she's got a book, and then she puts a cushion on top, and I'm talking about a thick book, and then a cushion on top of it, because as far back as the seat goes, it's still, the geometry doesn't work for her legs with the stuff in front of her. And so she's making a cushion that she'll take on the airplane, and she uses it in the airport. She can't sit upright for a long period of time, which is why we always take her wheelchair, because she can walk a little bit, and she uses her wheelchair as a walker. She uses it to ride. But more importantly than anything else is she uses it as a seat, because sitting upright puts so much pressure on her tailbone that causes her quite a bit of pain. So her wheelchair, reclines back. And and she'll make a cushion to do that. But I understand exactly. You've got your cushion, and again, how do you get all of that stuff transferred? And you said your device, so tell me. I guess I got to ask this question. I've been trying to think of figure this out. How does it work?
Which
you
one?
tell me a little bit about what it does, but how
which device? So the wheelchair spot or the adapt sling?
The adapt sling.
Sure. So it's a sling. It's fabric. It's it's fire retardant. We don't make it. We don't make it. It's made by a company called Adapts. We just provide it for free to people who want to be accounted for in the evacuation plan, and you can bring it on board. It comes in a little bag, and you can bring it and just have it that way, or you could already have it under you. And you can use it for transfers and have already under you while you're already traveling. So it could be used in multiple ways, and it can, it's not just for air travel. It could be used for even transfers in your own home. And in addition to the Adapt Sling, our organization also provides for free the Special Cares Harness. And the Special Cares Harness is the adult's disability harness. So it's a 4-point system that, well, if you are someone with reduced mobility who does not have trunk support, maybe for neuromuscular illnesses or paraplegics, it is an FAA approved seatbelt from AmSafe, which is the leading manufacturer of all the seatbelts on all of the airplanes today. And it will buckle you in, and you will not have to bring, say, your bath harnesses. Some people bring the straps from, say, their commodes, and they won't have to do that. They just bring this with them, and it's FAA approved.
Oh, very cool. That's and again, it just shows my ignorance that, I hadn't even thought about, okay, well, sometimes, because if you're able-bodied, you don't think about that, but not being able to provide your, stabilize your upper body, I can see where you would need the harness. So,
yeah, I think Alan might be able to, speak to this. It's, I know when he has had the opportunity to travel, he's needed his family members to hold him up during takeoff and landing. And so this device would, eliminate that need.
Yeah, like the takeoff and landings were a nightmare. I really had to have my mother hold me up, and yeah, for people with limited um, back strength, it's tough.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like you said, I hadn't thought about it. I didn't know if you've tried the train, Alan. The one thing that we have found is that the train has some advantages. And given if we have enough time, that's our preferred way of travel, even for relatively short distances, because they have a fully accessible restroom, which is pretty handy. Which, you know, again, you start thinking about having to get to the bathroom on a train. I mean, on a plane, you know, with no mobility, you know, there's just no way to do it. Um, you know, we have enough trouble. My wife has a little bit of challenge with, again, with her body geometry, trying to get in and fit into, you know, some of the smaller toilets on the airlines are a challenge for her. And like I said, comparatively speaking, she's in good shape. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
they do
live
have
in.
that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I live in the northeast corridor, so we're lucky that we have um, trains that can bring us to places nearby. I know several friends who they don't fly, but they use the train, and it's a good option, but it could always be better. It takes a long time compared to other countries.
Yeah, you don't have the choices. But we came back from Miami up. We live in North Carolina. We just primarily because I wanted to do a video about using an accessible, because they have accessible rooms, and then they have, you know, they have the accessible places to park. You know, and so we rented an accessible room. You know, because I just wanted to show that for the video, and we had not traveled in one. And then it was funny. I interviewed a young lady that. She's traveled all over. She had some amazing stories. Now, she's paraplegic, but she's got good upper body strength. But her partner at that point in time was also paraplegic, and so trying to get two of them into this accessible area that did not work nearly as easy, because it has one lower bed that's really designed for one person. Trying to put two people on it's almost because it has, you know, one lower and one upper, which
Oh, yeah.
you know, and having the accessible bathroom worked well, but then trying to get two wheelchairs in and all of those things. And so there's just so many challenges for those that travel. I really appreciate it. What else is there anything else that you guys are working on that the audience should need to know about?
Absolutely. So our organization is the only organization funding and conducting research for a wheelchair spot on airplanes. We conducted the very first crash test of wheelchair tie downs and wheelchairs starting in 2016. And because of our organization and because of the work that we have done, the FAA Reauthorization Act was signed in 2018 to fund a feasibility study at the congressional level for a wheelchair spot on airplanes. So the National Transportation Research Board, through the National Associations of Sciences, will be publishing a report based on our research this August, whether or not Congress will fully fund the research for a wheelchair spot on airplanes. And All Wheels Up is not waiting for this report. We're full steam ahead. We are working with organizations like SAE on creating those standards. Like I said, we're creating what does that plan look like for an evacuation if a wheelchair spot does happen. And we're working with universities and stakeholders such as the plane manufacturers. We're working with the wheelchair manufacturers to start going into R&D on FAA approved wheelchairs. And so we're really making leaps and bounds from where I think the community thinks that we are in regards to a wheelchair spot on airplanes.
Well, very nice.
Yeah,
And go ahead, Alan.
we're going to be having more things talking about our advocacy. Like there's several pieces of legislation that would make a tremendous difference. Like there's the Air Carrier Access Amendments Act, and that's sponsored by Senator Baldwin, and that one's gonna make a big difference for the disability community if it passes. And just like the disability community is very powerful, and yeah, like like we've experienced getting things done.
Well, very nice. In the show notes, or in the description down below, I will have links to your organization, to your website. Is there anything else so let me ask this as a question. If somebody wanted to help support your organization, what are the things that they could do to help you?
Absolutely. We get this question all the time. And we understand that the wheelchair community might not necessarily have the funds. So our first ask is always, and Alan can attest to this because he runs and manages all of our social media. Follow us on social media. You will know firsthand what's going on. And those social media ratings really go a long way when we're writing our grants. So follow us on all of our social media. And you can visit our website at www.allwheelsup.org, and you can find all of the social media sites that we're on. And we and click for our newsletter, and you can find what we're doing there. But of course, we are always looking for sponsorships. We always are grant writing. So if you know of an opportunity, you can share it with us. And every little dollar counts. We love those small donations just as much as the large donations. And it's because of the wheelchair community that we've been able to fund all of the research that we've been able to do to make a wheelchair spot possible. And we actually have a fundraiser going on right now. We are hosting a virtual run that you can register for right now. And it's in August, and it's in recognition of National Aviation Day and all of the great work that has happened all through the years for aviation. And we're promoting the accessible work that we're working on with National Aviation Day in August. So sign up. You can walk, run, roll, or bike, or just make a donation.
Okay. Well, very nice. Go ahead, Alan.
I wanted to add that on our donate page on our website, we have a chart that says what activities can be funded at what dollar amount. So that can help people a lot. And our social media is really growing, and every day we have more people with disabilities very excited about our work that want to help however they can. And there's still some people with disabilities that don't know what we're doing. So it's very life-changing for some people.
And I just want to echo what Alan's saying there. I think the biggest miss is that the wheelchair community isn't aware of the work that we're doing. And, it only sometimes takes when, say, someone's wheelchair is damaged that, somebody tries to find us. But we're here, Alan and I are here every day working on behalf of the disability community to try to improve accessible air travel. And so we just need a bigger horn. And if you want to help be that horn and raise awareness with us that there is an organization really working on behalf of the disability community, especially like you said, in those blind spots that nobody's thinking about, we're working on it.
Okay, yeah, and obviously I will do everything I can. And for those that are listening to this, I'm going to ask that you do several things. You're going to get a list of things that you should do. First of all, is follow All Wheels Up on all their social media, and then anytime they post something, retweet it, comment on it, put a heart on it, do something to signify some engagement, because that is how things get spread. If you just read the tweet, you haven't done anything really. I mean, you've learned and you've educated yourself, but you haven't done anything to share that message. So I would encourage you to do that with all of those that listen. And for those of you that follow me on social media, this will be on all of my social media. It'll be in Facebook. It'll be on YouTube. I will post it on Twitter. If you're following me, do me a favor, share that as well, and share the organization with all of your friends and your family members. Because if you, especially for those that have family members that travel with a challenge of some kind, you want to do all you can to spread the word, to get other people to chip in and help. And it doesn't have to be financially, just getting them to share this message will have so much impact.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Thanks.
For everybody that's still watching, I know I lose some before we get to the end. Do me a favor, hit like, and I'm going to ask you to share this video. I don't often ask you to share videos. but please share this video around as much as you can. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And again, I appreciate very much all that you guys are doing. I think it is such a worthwhile organization. If you'll stay around for just a minute, I have a couple of ideas I'll share with you afterwards. But we'll see everybody in another video.